Time I start making nostalgia post, I have difficulty as a human being staying on topic because it's like I have a lot to say about a whole bunch of shit all at once. But this video in particular, I will do my best. I've multiple takes of trying to get this out there. I disagree with one of the big perspectives that's out there regarding Final Fantasy 11 at this point. I wanted to say that. And what I wanted to say to elucidate it out loud is that a lot of people are talking about the private servers and the HorzionXI project and Final Fantasy 11 classic, 75 cap era servers. And I wanted to say, leave me out of that. And I wanted to explain why. And because of that, I also want to, make an advocacy post about why you should not go over to Horizon. And so from my perspective, I want to give you some background details about me as a player of the game. You know, I built the computer and put about $1,500 into it. My parts didn't arrive until basically a day or two after the game launched. In North America. So when it launched in the United States, basically, so I had to build a PC to play because I needed a video card in the whole thing, and I didn't want to wait around for the hard drive that. And it's good that I didn't because it took fucking forever to actually show up. And so they're asking, is Final Fantasy 11 worth buying in 2023? And yes, uh, the big the big problem that I deal with though as a player is just that it's not murking and gill selling that I would complain about as a person, because actually, to be honest with you, at this point, I think SE should change its policies and basically say those are now no longer violations of the terms and nor are third party programs. Like, you can do what you want and turn it into a free for all. Because the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, botters, mercs, all those people that are making money off the whole thing, those are all paying, contributing members of the community. They are dues paying, tax paying citizens that should be treated with the same respect that the rest of us are in the system. They're no different than everybody else in it. So let's let them and leave them alone. Let's change the rules for the system is what I would say. So my problem is not with murking. It's not with gill selling. It's just you know I don't but I would warn you. If that's going to be a thing for you, like there's a lot of it on Asura going on. Asura is pretty much the big place where that kind of activity is taking place. That's the server that I'm part of. I would also tell you that Asura has a kick-ass community in the background that you know is building a bunch of stuff going. Like there's a bunch of link shells that are really cool end game shells on Asura that are pretty based, and that will give you quite a bit of the stuff that you fish up doing end game stuff like Dynamis D and everything. They'll give you quite a bit of the crap so that you can either use it to upgrade your own gear or sell it on the auction house to go buy the stuff that you actually need to upgrade your equipment. You know, or like heaven forbid, if you wanted to go and make a burner account and sell the gill off to other people who could use it, so that you're joining the gill selling community. I would absolutely love tips from everybody else that Gil sells about how to fly under the radar doing it personally. But so the thing though, despite that personal take on the game, I would just say, is it worth it in this year? Well, I would tell you, don't go over to Horizon because the 75 cap era sucked. It's like one of the most overrated, in the community. Like, this is like, you look at it and they're all like, oh no, this was great, it was so hard, it was so brutally hardcore, we love that. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you a fucking glutton for punishment as a gamer? Like, seriously, this system was awful. Now what I mean by it is just like I mained like black mage during like the 75 cap era. Hell on earth. Okay, great when you get to the point in which you're able to basically black mage burn with ancient magic spells through like those damn jellies and everything. That was great and all, but the one thing that just like objectively fucking sucked about the game at that point was just it didn't matter anymore. It was like, okay, back during my day when I was playing, like you could maybe like farm like mistletoe, for instance, and that would get you like maybe 40k an hour of experience of actually guild grinding. You could do teleports with your white mage, but nobody paid you more than like about 3k a teleport. That was it. I mean, you would have to basically be doing that for an insanely long period of time to make the kind of guild that you needed. Like, when you actually started thinking it through and everything, it was hellish. There were really no objectively good ways to make gil, which, unless you had a big team of people together that was teaming up in cooperation in order to go do Gil and some of the harder content together. So just was no really good way to make it. And so what it meant was, effectively, you have this whole big problem in the old world where like there's no good way to make Gil. Gil, you could spend a shit ton of time grinding for Gil, but it's just you've got better shit to do with your life than just constantly Gil grind. And plus you're not going to be exping anymore on anything that matters if you're doing that. So that's a dedicated activity where you're fighting low level shit just for the shit that it drops. And that means that you should probably go off and suck it up and level a thief in order to have treasure hunter and everything for doing it. But even still, you wouldn't make nearly enough doing this kind of crap. It was just a shit system back then in the day. You would not make enough money no matter what you did in order to really make it worth it to be guild grinding in the game. And so it was like you were dependent on engaging in real money trade because there was just no fucking way to do anything in the 75 cap era without it. You would not be able to buy literally any of your gear as a that anything that wasn't like rare X than that you got with your link shell, like it, like like Vermilion Cloak, for instance. Like you're not going to get that unless you fucking spend money. That was it, and I'm talking real world money on the fucking gill just to go buy it in order to go buy your cloak in the first place. And it was like nothing is affordable. Everything's at stupidly high, inflated prices that would require a shit ton of gill grinding. Like, who the fuck is actually raising the money to go buy some of these items, and how are they fucking doing it? Because there are just no really good ways to make it during the 75 era. The new system introduced a ton of great ways to go about doing it, and everybody's all just like the Sparks was great while it lasted, but everybody's all in this whole mentality. They've got this whole just like what the actual fuck to people that's going on, and they're all just like, I don't get it. I don't understand why somebody would want to go back to the old way of doing things, because like you would spend a ton of time like to talk about Horizon and what it would be like during the 75 cap era. You have to go walk all the way from the start, like not the starter cities, but like Juneau, Whitegate, one of those places, in the thing, and you have to go walk all the way to your destinations to do like Chains of Promanthea quest. Do you know what it's going to be like? Like trying to get into like C, which is a pretty key place in the 75 cap era over there on Horizons. Let me like It's going to be hell on earth. It's not going to be an enjoyable experience. You're going to have difficulty forming a party in the first place to go do it. You're going to be shouting in Juno for hours and hours on end to find somebody to go do it. You're going to spend at least 4 hours doing it, and then you can roll the dice and have maybe a 20% chance of actually prevailing after spending 2 more hours. And so by the time it's all over, you've got about an 85% chance of wiping after spending 6 hours trying to go and complete like the Diablo's quest just to get through that part of Brains of Bromanthea. And that's what you're faced with. Because for me, I had a different play style than most people. Like my individual use case in that whole thing, I would play really hard for like 3 to 6 months probably, and then quit for 3 to 6 months, come back. And the timing of all of it couldn't have been worse. It was like I got into it, I got to maybe through Promethean like Hala at best. I'm not really quite entirely sure about it if I did complete Hala anymore. It's been a while, but I did it. I tried the Promi quest a couple of times, got wiped at least a few, and then what naturally happened was I found enough people, I think, to get through and clear that and get maybe to like the aqueducts, and then like it was just you got to like Diablo, to that point in the damn thing, and then it just fell apart. You couldn't find a fucking party anymore. It was like an enormous investment of time of just shouting in Juno for a fucking pickup group for hours and hours on end to have a very low chance of prevailing and that anybody really knows what they're doing when going up against him. And you would spend a huge chunk of time, and at least one of those 2 hours, so it's really more like three. You have to add another one for an adjustment just to make it to the room that you need to get into to fight the fucking bastard. So you've spent about 7 hours by the time all is said and done on the whole thing. I mean, and by the way, it's probably going to be even higher than that because by the time your party is forming and the amount of time that it takes for that party to form, a couple players will run out of time and drop out of your party between then. So you're really talking about spending like 9, 10 hours just trying to get this all together to go do what you're trying to do. And by then, you a whole your whole day has basically been wasted on this whole thing. And that's the Final Fantasy 11 experience from back in the day. This system would not be built today the way that it was. Let me tell you how bad Final Fantasy 11 was back then. They had a joke announcement on the whole thing. It would say, you would sign in and it would give you this pop-up dialogue box that would say, you know, oh, hi, like don't let this game take over your life, basically like your real life priorities matter more. You would go in and like the first thing that you would be hit with an encounter wise that you would end up realizing that this just didn't make sense was Fafnir. Like 72-hour spawn window can load at any point in random. Like I don't know if it's actually 72 hours, but it's like some absurd long spawn window and it can launch like any time in that space. And so if it comes up at 2:15 in the morning when in local time for you when you're like dead out or asleep, or like if you're a night owl, like the complete reverse, it's like basically 2 p.m. in the day, to, or 2 p.m. instead of 2 a.m. Like if you're a night owl, or like maybe more like 12, or like 7:30 in the morning, like shit. I mean, it could launch at any point in that whole thing. And what you would need to do was go get your phone, pull up the phone number, and give it to all your Link Shell members so that they can, and then turn the volume all the way up so that they can wake you out of a sound sleep when it does spawn, so that you can go whack Fafnir with them. Because the rewards of getting that fucking riddle back in the day were so fucking huge. But that was hell. It was like you needed to be basically on call. My dad worked in the IT industry. Like he had worked for the bank, and the bank had such critical infrastructure that they needed to have him with a beeper on him so that they could get a hold of him in order to tell him that he needed to call them and call in, so that because something had went down that needs to its administrator to go work on and fix. you know and so what they did was kind of pass the shit can around in the sense that there was a few IT workers that could do that level of support for the company, and like you wouldn't be on call every week, but some weeks you would be, and so they just kind of passed it around the team who was basically on call for the week. And I remember there could be some very stressful days that you had where you'd be working your ass off all day on something with his work, and it just got me that they could basically sound him out of a dead sleep at you know 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would have to get up and go dial into work to, fix whatever went wrong, because the consequences of having like production servers down and people being unable to access it were just so, enormously consequential that, even a few like minutes of outage can cost the company millions of dollars. And so you're really leaning heavily on your IT staff. And so if something does go wrong, on production, like they're going to need people to deal with that in rapid order, because like the clock is ticking and the company is losing a ton of money for every second of outage. And that's just the reality of like work in the IT industry. You need 99.99999% uptime, and it's hard to actually deliver that at the end of the day. It's a huge challenge for the tech industry and everything. And you know, pulling it off requires certain people be like trade, you know, who's on call, and it's like that was happening to me in Final Fantasy. It was happening to numerous players where like the only way to deal with things would have been to have the link shell that they worked with, have basically traded phone numbers with each other, or have some kind of like team speak at least, where they could like make a blaringly loud alarm to wake somebody out of a sound sleep to go whack Fafnir kind of game. And it was like you had H&Ms that were like that. You had notorious monsters that were competed over by so many people. It was so bad that somebody would have to be up, watching Fafnir at that point, and that person would have to be, competing with other people that were watching them. And if they got the claim, and the party, would have to basically tell every like you would prep this all like setup wise, where like everybody else would go to the place where he spawned and then log out and go to sleep so that they could get to him very quickly if they were summoned. But you would not have your complete team together to go do him after, when you got the claim. You would just have enough of a party together to handle, doing the heals and keeping people alive as people are being summoned and woken up to go log in to whack Fafnir after they got the claim, and to make that series of phone calls that you would have to make to these people that are like dead out at, 3:30 in the morning playing the game. And that was 75 cap error for you. Like, your life is now Final Fantasy 11. You will not have friends in the real world. You won't have cyber friends outside the game. You won't have much of anything. This game is now your heroine. It's your world now. It's your job, and you will not have anything else to do. Any other priorities that you have will fall by the wayside, and you will be devoted to exactly one thing: Final Fantasy 11. Don't let this happen to you. Don't join Horizon. Don't go over to the 75 cap error shit. It just wasn't worth it. You could burn your whole fucking day just trying to get a party together to do Chains of Promanthea. The 75 cap era was not an era in which it was easy at all to make Gil. It was ridiculously hard to make it. There was nothing that you could do to reasonably make a good amount about it in a decent amount of time. Only an indecent amount of time doing Gil grinding. So you ended up having to do real money trade. Fuck the rules, whatever they actually say back then. No. So, the game's changed. Now it's like I can do a lot of this shit by myself. Not, or if not by myself, I know who I can lean into and ask to go do it with me. I'm a veteran of that system. I've gotten better and better at playing it. So, I would just tell you, don't go over to Horizons. It's a shit show. Like, I was there for most of the 75 cap era. If there's one thing in the history of video gaming I don't miss, it's the 75 cap era. Pile of shit experience. I can't believe it. When I look back on my memories and I remember shit like the Juno Death March, I'm just astonished that anybody ever tolerated it in the first place.